what we're looking to do is not bring you onto the brokerage, but it's, am I the right match at the right time to work with you for this phase of your career? Or is our brokerage the right brokerage for you in this next phase of your career?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to In the House podcast. My name is Jenny Woon. We are just missing a person next to me, my co-host, Tony. She's just on a brief leave. She's just recovering over a cold. But we do have a special guest with us today. His name is Cameron. How are you doing, Cameron?
I'm great, Jenny. How are you?
I'm good. Notice I didn't say your last name because I don't know how to pronounce it.
I get that a lot. But it's Tsoi-A-Sue, like soy sauce.
That doesn't, I will not remember that. Tsoi-A-Sue.
Yep. There you go.
Or it may be easier to say like a Soyuz, like to remember through, or Soyuz and then a Soyo. Wait, now I forgot. Tsoi-A-Sue. Tsoi-A-Sue. Okay. And so I've known you for over 10 years. I can call you my friend, a colleague in the business. Tell our listeners what you do and a little bit about your background.
So I started out as a realtor, and I remember actually the first time I met you was at a Remax orientation for all the brand new little realtors fresh out of real estate school. It was sort of exciting times. I did about 4 or 5 years in sales. I made a series of accolades, and I would call myself a good agent, but not a super productive agent, because it just wasn't really a great fit, or I just wasn't super excited about the work in the same way. Through a couple of life changes, I ended up on the management or the recruitment and brokerage development agent training side of the business. And I took off and I thrived in that part of the business like mad. So for the last 8 or so years, I've been doing agent business development, training, recruiting, and working at those things both as sort of like an inside sales kind of position where you're booking meetings and getting in touch with people and getting to know them on the phone, and then also in a direct like one-on-one, meeting, coming on board, working with agents, providing the sort of value proposition of a brokerage. And then also doing a lot of one-on-one and fulfilling that. So in those recruiting meetings, oftentimes promises get made and they need to be fulfilled, or you have a lot of upset realtors.
Yes. Well, you've been in that position where you understand what a realtor requires to do their job. And good for you for knowing where your zone of genius is, because a lot of agents do struggle, into their 4th, 5th year, and they're wondering if this is the right career for them. And you made that power move to train and develop and help people develop their businesses. So I have to say, when I had coffee with you right after that session, I really found you very easy to talk to, and so I don't know how many years later. I don't remember how many years ago that was, but definitely more than 10 years ago. We're here today. We're working together, and if it's okay, you're helping me as a recruiting consultant.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a recent development. So just sort of growing and expanding that and taking it out of an individual experience, working with an exclusive brokerage, and now taking that out to a broader audience. Sort of the next career move for me, and been going very well.
Congrats.
I've only been fired by one client, and I only got fired by them because they're like, we went from not too many to like 2-3 recruits a month, and that's more than we can handle. We're kind of doing great, and we don't know what to say. And I was like, send me referrals, and they're like, sure,
Yeah.
here you go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Success has
That's
become my worst enemy.
so how many agents would you say you've recruited in your lifetime, including the ones that you helped in other brokerage?
Oh, I geez, probably if I think from the start of my career when I was from the start of this side of it, uh 50 by 400 that I was actively involved in, plus, you know, I don't even begin I couldn't even begin to tell you how many people, like, because it's a word here, a tweak there, and
Mhm.
suddenly the floodgates open, and the one little shift you needed to make in the presentation or in your marketing
Mhm.
clicks. I mean, but I've been personally sort of involved in the team or directly doing the recruiting for probably around 400 or 500 realtors.
Amazing. That's a good great number, and that's why I hired you. Uh, and
Uh,
so touching with and obviously it's really hard to count as well because it takes and I've learned this, it takes 4 or 5 times or even a couple years to actually recruit an agent to the brokerage or retain or even keep a realtor engaged constantly in to stay at the brokerage. So, what qualities would you say that you've seen that are essential to becoming like a successful realtor, and how do you assess those qualities? If you were to help me as a managing broker and owner broker, what qualities should I look for?
so this is a really interesting conversation, because there's two elements to that. One element is this, it's almost an ephemeral element, and I say it like this: is you can't measure the heart of a champion, right? That person who is going to be successful, who is, in their heart and soul destined for the highest part of this industry, there isn't a metric for that, right?
Mm,
We all start this career with hope and aspirations and dreams and goals and energy, and that sort of like starry-eyed new entrepreneur moment comes before the sort of depressed part of it where we're like, oh my god, this is not what I thought it was. uh,
depressed. We can't
but
use
there's
that
a
word.
yeah,
Okay.
there's a couple of really common elements that I see as a background. Um, Not so much ironically personality profile, because you can be successful in every personality profile, whether you're thinking disc or something else. But uh, are you used to making 100 grand a year already? I.e., does your professional background indicate a high level of income earning? Because if you've
Mm,
earned high income before, the likelihood is you will continue to earn high income because you're going to work to keep your lifestyle in place.
mm,
That's an important one. B, do you come from a career of very high responsibility? So, I don't know too many doctors that leave medicine to get into real estate, but that high responsibility career where a lot depends on you, even though it might not pay. So I think somebody who might be in a just in general a lower paying industry, but they're in a significant leadership role, right? That's another big one. Do you have a significant community that you have a leadership position in, whether that position is formal or informal? Like, think about somebody who's really deeply involved with their church or a community group. And, just the support of that community group can carry somebody into fantastic levels of success.
mhm,
And then the other part is, do you have I think another one is documented sales success, even if it's in another industry. So if you've succeeded, say, for example, at cell phone sales for TELUS, and you were like their number one salesperson, yeah, you will have a set of skills that will lend itself very naturally into a career transition. So it's not the entire set of skills, but it
mhm.
certainly eases a major part of the career transition in. So those would be
That
the
really does make sense.
yeah.
Mhm. The
There's a
first part
few.
you said yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say there's a few other esoteric ones that I've kind of stumbled across, like oldest sibling.
Me?
Let me guess, you had to take on a lot of responsibility for your younger siblings over the years?
I I would say I just did a lot of, um No, I was very independent, and I would say I was a really good role model, but I wasn't babysitting them like I was their mother. I felt, compelled to just always lead, like have some sort of leadership role, knowing that I had, was firstborn.
There you go. And I
Yeah,
bet that's transitioned somewhat into the, stunning success of your career.
yeah. Well, I have, yeah. My all my teammates are, they're my. I don't want to call them babies, but I hold a lot of responsibility to make sure that they're living a good life.
That's important. And
Um,
and that's exactly what the
yeah,
industry should be, providing you a good life, right?
yeah. And the first point actually interested me because you said you can't measure the heart of the champion, where the heart and soul has a really high, like surge to do good and be better. Is that? Would you call that passion?
I don't know. I mean, it certainly can be passion, for sure. Uh, but I found that some people like to work hard.
Hmm.
And it's not always passion for real estate. Sometimes it's passion for business. I
Right.
mean, the way I think of it is, it's one of the porta potty companies, and it was like Honey Bucket or something. And they entered the owners of that company, the founders of that company, entered into a business not because they were super passionate about waste reduction. Right?
No.
They were really excited about that, but they saw a phenomenal business opportunity, and they entered in and they chased the entrepreneurial dream. So
Yes.
they were really interested in the business, if not the product itself. And they saw a
Hmm.
huge opportunity in that product, I think more so than their love of sewage.
I would have to say I'm the same. Like, I wouldn't say I'm passionate about real estate itself. I'm not an HGTV person. I don't watch the Selling Sunsets. I don't watch that. I don't go to house tours for the fun of it. I'm more interested in what can I build using, I guess, real estate as the conversation, and I've built multiple like businesses around that.
Mhm.
And
And
yeah, my job has evolved over. So I gotcha. I understand. So how do you, I guess, from you're interviewing someone or I'm interviewing someone, and you see that they're a high likely, a good candidate to be part of the brokerage. How do you assess, um, moving forward, their commitment to professional development and their willingness to adapt to different market conditions? Let's say they are involved in a certain something. Maybe they're a leader in certain something, but as you know, real estate changes like constantly. So how do we gauge their commitment to continuously learn?
oh, that's a tough one. I think some of those things are just really found in the open conversation and the open dialogue. Uh,
Hmm.
and I mean, I've certainly had this when I was selling, when I was working with an agent who's very experienced, and you're talking to them about the transaction. And you could just tell that there's a level of commitment, knowledge, understanding, even though you haven't, expressly looked at their educational history, right? When you're dealing more on the new agent side, um, you've got to kind of lay out, I find there's two elements of the business for them. One is the business development side. Are you finding new clients, and are you, building sales and developing relationships and all the things we do to grow our revenue? There's another side of the business, which is the don't lose your license side. And for the newer agent, it's setting the expectation. And the newer agent, the expectation is, there is an expectation in our company around professionalism, beyond just keeping up with your PDP credits, beyond just going to board conversation, but it's about being truly knowledgeable about your field. There's a
Hmm.
ton of time that I invest even today, even though I'm not directly involved in selling, in looking at and analyzing real estate market statistics. Part of that is because I need to be able to talk intelligently with the top professionals in the industry. if I'm not up to date and they're leading the conversation and I can't follow, there's little to no attraction between us because we're not at the same tier when it reflects in our knowledge. So when we start having far more in-depth conversations about market statistics, things like that, you know that that person has invested time and energy into it. When they rattle off, I mean, for me, when they rattle off a bunch of numbers, it just goes like boom, boom, boom. Oh yeah, these are the sales in this neighborhood, and these are the indicators. I go, okay, you're staying on top of your game. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
staying on top of your game there, you're probably staying on top of your game in other areas. When you hear the complaint, I couldn't believe what this other realtor put in the contract. It was the worst clause I've ever read. You know that that's somebody who has the experience or a level of in-depth and understanding about what should or shouldn't go into a contract. Or at the very least, an interest. If they might be
Mm-hmm.
they might be off because things are always changing, but there's an interest. And if you want to take it one level, like really deep and differentiate the serious people, you start getting into more economics driven conversations.
Mm.
And where you start talking about the relationship of things like employment rates, median income, population growth, things like that on real estate and on what's driving the market. Or it could be other economic factors that, are of date, interest rates, things like that. Those become like the major, broader, or the potential to open up far deeper conversations around those things. Because I venture a guess, very few people, let alone realtors, track the unemployment rate really aggressively in their
Yeah,
market area.
of course. Of course.
Similarly,
It-
not many of us know the median income in our market area.
yeah. Yeah.
And that's a major driver towards pricing, like future predictor of pricing.
Yeah. And now that I think of it, I in my monthly market meetings, I do a 30-minute super high level detail information about the Burnaby area specifically and population growth in like the quadrants of Burnaby. So there's Brentwood, Metrotown, Lougheed, and Edmonds area. And I kind of find it. I'm really. Um, I love how the agents are really engaged because they don't know. Unfortunately, they're not very resourceful. And all I'm doing is I'm just taking all this information from the CMHC website, the City of Burnaby website. It's all public information, but yet they're not finding the time to do their homework. And as you know, real estate is such a easy topic to talk about, and it's constantly in the news. You're talking to somebody in the elevator about it, or over a coffee, and it always comes up in conversation. So, yes. So what we're saying right now to all the listeners is be on top of your game. Be very knowledgeable. Learn every day what is happening in the market and how it affects your clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. So for me, I'm super proud of my systems in place on onboarding. What tools and let's for the listeners, what tools and resources would you say every brokerage should set up to successfully onboard an agent?
So I'm thinking this is after the moment when the agent says yes. Uh, and
Hmm.
they've signed their BCFSA transfer forms and everything else. The first and foremost thing is, to a new environment, all agents need a map. And that is the simple things of, how do I put a deposit check into the trust account?
Yeah.
And it's really weird, but every brokerage does that. They have to have a trust account.
Yeah.
Uh, but every brokerage will do it a little differently. Some brokerages still use bank drafts. Others use certified checks. There's all kinds of metrics, wire transfer. So that welcome package needs to have a map to all your basic services, like the most fundamental things. The other thing I think is really important is, uh, when you level up, it's a map and a guide. So whether
Hmm.
that's the front desk person who will guide them for all things administrative, and you can go, hey, if you have a question about administration, conveyancing, deposits, like the basic mechanics of a transaction. Call this person or email this person. There's going to be a guide for training, whether that's the managing broker or a trainer or whatever the positions are, people you have as resources in the brokerage. Hey, here's the link to get access to Skyslope and our online training portal and everything else. And when you're completely lost and you've forgotten about this, call this person. They
Right.
will remind you, right? And so those guideposts, because whether you're a new agent starting up and the environment is totally new to you and you're lost on everything, or you're transitioning in from an old environment to a new environment, you need a roadmap to orient
Mm-hmm.
yourself in how to function, right? An experienced agent isn't necessarily looking for how you can help me find new clients, but
Mm-hmm.
they could definitely be interested in some of the time saving services.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I used to do paper conveyancing. Well, maybe not so much anymore, but I'm using a really outdated software and now I'm on, the latest, Oakland technology or whatever that is. I'm not oriented and I'm not trained up on the mechanics of that. And it's supposed to save me time, but if I don't develop at least the basic user skill, it doesn't save me any time. So
Right.
that orientation process is, I think, really key in getting somebody set up powerfully to succeed in your office.
Awesome. I feel like I'm on top of the game for that one
I
from the
do
very
so
beginning.
well.
So, and before, let's go back a little bit. Before they say yes, what attracts a realtor? Like, what attracts a realtor to choose a brokerage like mine or any brokerage? So what kind of value are they looking for?
So this is really interesting because I think very few agents are going to start at one brokerage and stay there for 30, 40 years or the entirety of their career. And what I think is different brokerages offer different value, and agents will encounter those brokerages at a time in their career where the value proposition that a given office has matches their needs really well.
Hmm.
And what you see happening is like there are brokerages that are great cost wise for new agents, right? They're local or they're smaller or small brands. They could be big brokerages with 200-300 agents, but
Hmm.
their primary value proposition is price driven or cost
Hmm.
driven, they'll attract a lot of new agents. That may match somebody at a time in their career when the circumstances of their life dictate that's the right way for them to go. Uh, and you could be a brokerage that's trying to target high end 25 plus transaction agents, and there's only, 30 agents in your office, but they're all producing at an insane level. It's a
Hmm.
totally different value proposition because the needs of people in those businesses are different than the needs of the people at different stages of their career, right? When
Hmm.
you're getting going and you need to learn how to prospect, it's a fundamentally different need and drive than somebody that's trying to transition into a more referral based business,
Hmm.
that has a client base, or that somebody who's running a team, right? It's a totally different need and drive.
And so what you're saying is a brokerage really does need to know their key differentiators in the market and how they stand differently amongst other brokerages.
Absolutely. And I think importantly, when you're beginning to build a target market list or a prospect list, the more you narrow in on your differentiators, the more clear you are about those things that separate you from other offices. And again, these don't have to be like these are the five best things ever. These are the things where you as your office are going to dominate. We are going to
Mhm.
be the best at market analysis. When you're talking about, we go in depth in Burnaby and, you know, population and demographics and income and education levels, and we lay that stuff out for you. Nobody else is going to do that better than us. There's an
Mhm.
agent who's at a stage in their career where they need that kind of information to go to the next level or to grow or whatever it is they want to accomplish. That's a key to unlocking that. The more you match your value with the target market, agents will self-select, right? They'll, hey, I really want that. That means a lot to me. They'll start to come. And B, there's also a time, this is the flip side, when they go, I got everything I needed here. It's time for me to move on. And they're not necessarily actively seeking, but they begin to open up to new opportunities and new possibilities where other offices are offering that value.
Mhm.
And so they kind of look at it and they go, maybe now is the time. And most agents, I think, go through 2 or 3 brokerages in a career.
Mhm.
It's the extreme minority that stay at one.
Mhm.
And the other
Like
challenge you'll see, I
myself.
think, too, with migration is mismatch. It's when they get promised the moon and delivered a pebble.
I've never heard of that statement before, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's here's a nice, pretty white rock from the beach. That's the moon.
Um, well, I've been lucky to have grown in this business of having moving from one brokerage to another. And I would have to say that the reasons for those moves were not, I felt like it was really time for me to move on because I've outgrown what that brokerage was offering me. And so, timing wise, I I believe the manager brokers maybe sensed that I needed to move or something because or they were, they did a really good job making me think I needed to move and so I moved. So but I have to say those moves were great decisions on my part so I want to thank myself for that. Um and I've, yeah, just evolved over the years because the brokerage delivered what they said they would do. And here I am today, now running one and understanding now the process of a cycle of what a realtor, when I'm in it, I'm in it. I don't really know what's going on. But now that I'm on the other side, I'm like, wow, that I see, the decisions, the important decisions people need to make in order to improve their business. So thanks for clarifying that. Um,
Absolutely.
Makes a lot of sense. And so if we're not that we're trying to pigeonhole ourselves into like a certain type of agent, but how do we cut through the noise of recruiting? Because I have many ways of like we're in Google ads, we're in Indeed, we have website people looking me up, but there's lots of people who come through that aren't really the right match, and so I can I can go on and on and on at the table and try to sell the brokerage. But at some point, I also have to think, okay, this person's not the right fit, right? So, and I know that I'm pressured with the numbers because I have to perform as well since I'm a franchise. So, how do I cut through that noise of recruiting?
So this is so again, there's a few things, and you mentioned one already, is our differentiators. There's a key set of differentiators that make every brokerage what that office is, even among a bigger brand, right? Or even among a growing brand. Your office is unique and it aligns with that brand, ideally, but there are things that you're going to do that nobody else is going to do because they're you.
Hmm.
So part of it is knowing. The second part is matching. And rather than think of a recruiting conversation as a sales conversation, I think of it as a career conversation where we're just going to have a really open conversation about your career, what you want out of the business, what the goals are. Do you love property? Because some people do. Do you love interior design and staging? And this is your way to sort of be involved in a passion? Great. Are you the entrepreneur that goes, you could pull real estate in and plug in, I don't know, coffee, and I would become a great cafe? That's good too. But what I want to do is begin to open you up to what are your career goals? Who do you want to be at the outcome of this?
Mm.
What, what is that thing that you need to go to grow? Whether you're brand new and you need strong guidance and strong leadership on how to prospect and what to say and what to do, or whether you're really experienced and you're looking for more efficient systems, or you're looking for more software solutions, and this is a great way to access it. um, you cannot get to the closing part of the conversation until you actually open somebody up.
Mhm.
And I think it's something, if this is done incredibly well as a process, the person that you're talking to has a moment where they say something they've never said before. They might always have known it, but you bring that piece of information out of them and it gives them insight into themselves.
Mm.
And that moment where you help somebody learn something about themselves, a I've always found that to be almost like a sacred moment, right? It's a really powerful thing where you understand somebody and they understand you, and just that light bulb goes on and they go, whoa, like that was really neat. And in that one experience, they can that can shift that person entirely. And the more that we bring those moments of understanding, or we help that person have those moments of understanding, I also think the more powerful the draw to the brokerage.
Let's hold this space for a little bit. That was amazing. Um, More than anything, every person wants to feel heard and seen and not a number. They went through university, they're going through the real estate course, and they're just a number. But yet, you're bringing in the human side of things, of trying to understand who they are and what they want to be. Um, this is amazing. I'm getting chills. I'm getting chills because um, there are so many brokerages out there that all they care about is hitting the volumes, the numbers, and paying the bills. And it's not easy running a brokerage, but this is really deep. And would you say that this is a safe conversation to have on the very first meeting?
I think you kind of gauge that. I've had, introductory meetings where, in the first, by the end of the hour, it's like we've been best friends for 10 years. And you're hearing about some really wild things from people,
Hmm.
like life traumas that you're like, you wouldn't tell this to somebody who you just met. I've also had times where it's a good first meeting, and
Hmm.
then the second one, it opens up and it opens up and it opens up, and everybody's a little different. Some people are just private, and that's okay. But there's also huge understanding. It doesn't always have to become personal. There can be huge understanding about asking somebody about, you know, what do you really want to get out of your career as a realtor? Like
Hmm.
it's not like a childhood dream for most kids. Being a realtor is not, grow up, that's what I want to be. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple, but fireman, lawyer, policeman, those kinds of things are way more common, right? Uh, so we come into this career looking for something:
Right.
better quality of life, higher income, more time freedom. There's so many things that somebody could come seeking. And because of the capacity that the industry allows for creativity, you can accomplish that here. It's your unique challenge that you're taking on to hit your goal. And the more that we can make that goal clear for a realtor or for that person, the more, the easier it is for them to to understand the next step that they need to make.
Mhm.
Sometimes, sometimes the next step is into our environment as a brokerage, right?
Mhm.
And we
Mhm.
back that up. We can say, hey, here's our, there's a lot of tangibles. Like I couldn't imagine trying to be the brokerage that still tried to do all their processing on paper.
Mm.
Like you're just, so there's a certain level of things that every brokerage needs to have just to be considered in a marketplace, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you can't be a brokerage without a trust account. if you if you
Nope, that's
refuse
one of the first things I did.
yeah, if you refuse to provide conveyancing, you will not be in business for long. Uh, so there's a set of core services that we all need to engage in, but then there's the extras, and we need to be very competent at our core, no matter who we are.
Mhm.
Barrier to entry. What we begin to look at is those extras. And we also want to be conscientious too, I think, of developing a culture, right? There are realtors who, you might have a culture of productive, maybe not the top in the industry, but say it's a very low ego culture, right? Where people are really committed to helping one another and, supporting each other in transactions, and they've got a really great connection. And you bring somebody in who's a huge producer, but they can be very negative, they can be very competitive, not in a positive sense, but in sort of like a detracting sense of competition. They can be super ego driven, and that can really hurt your culture.
Mhm.
And sure, it looks good on the books. You brought a ton of transactions into the office, and part of that is in the best capacity that you can. The broker owner or the person who's making that recruitment decision also needs to be able to say no for what they think of
Mhm.
is the best thing for their office moving forward.
Mhm. Great point. And so, what kind of lessons have you learned through this process yourself that I can avoid?
that you can avoid.
Please tell me. Yeah.
um, wow, that's a big question. I think the biggest thing for me personally was the shift away from the sense of selling uh, to the sense of career conversation,
Mhm.
where what we're looking to do is not bring you onto the brokerage, but it's, am I the right match at the right time to work with you for this phase of your career? Or is our brokerage the right brokerage for you in this next phase of your career?
Mhm.
And becoming okay with the no. Like there's a part of me that is still a salesperson.
Yeah.
I if I'm on a hot streak, I can get a little bit hard on myself when I don't get somebody saying yes to me at one meeting. And to the point where I can even sabotage my own follow-ups if I'm honest. Where it's like, you didn't say yes on the first one, next. Which, you know, it's a little bit of an ego-driven thing. I'm not immune.
Yeah, it hurts. It
Yeah.
hurts.
But, there's that sense of, okay, to step back from that and to go, no, let's see if we're a really great match. Is there tangible value that I can provide? Was this insight that we got from the conversation that we had, or conversations, more likely, plural, right? 3 to 5. Was that insight valuable enough that you think there's something here for you?
Mm, okay.
And then the other part is to change that mindset as well, to be okay with going to you yourself saying, I I don't feel like this is a really great fit,
Right.
and they
Being
and
okay with that.
yeah, and to reject somebody else's, particularly when you might have gone to the third meeting with them and you've
Mhm.
been marketing and emailing and calling, and then pretty soon you hit this and you go, this just doesn't feel right for us. And it
I would
seems almost like you
yeah.
wasted their time, right?
Well, I would say, I would meet a couple of times with couple agents, and then they decided to go a different direction, which is entirely different from what they told me they needed. And I would be asking myself, did I not cover that? Or don't I offer that here? And I feel like, and then I start self sabotaging. Oh man, this person didn't like me. Everything was there, right? Delivered on a silver platter, but it was me that they didn't like. And I've had to step back and say, you know what? It's just not the right fit or not the right timing. And sometimes it's also communication. Maybe it's they're afraid to ask for something, and maybe actually sometimes I would say, well, maybe I'm just too good and they don't think they're good enough. which which I mean, it makes me feel good about it, but at the same time I'm like, oh man, did I come across too aggressive or too successful? I think women tend to do that we do that to ourselves. We're too successful, especially when we're dating. We're too successful for whole different episode.
Well, different clothes, different pitch.
Yeah.
Uh,
um, how do you? So, what advice would you give me um, to, I guess, grow? Like you were mentioning earlier that this brokerage was recruiting 2 to 3 with your assistants, and so what advice would you give me as I'm growing my brokerage? I'm at 14, 15 months now.
mhm. The f- uh, so there's a number of sort of basic system checks, which is like, is your prospect list of a sufficient size? Do you have some consistent outreach, going out to realtors on a regular basis? Are you giving people a view? It's a curated view inside your office. Is your social media up and functioning? Um, but for you or for any broker, I'd say become very clear about what makes your brokerage unique. To back that up with evidence. It's
Mm,
nice to say I have a great culture in my office. Show me.
yeah.
And the more, and to really back that up with evidence, show me that this culture provides me one referral per year. That's a tangible value that you say, look, our culture is so powerful that our internal offices, our agents average one referral from inside the office every year.
Mm,
And you go, what do you mean? People don't refer inside their own office? That's insane. Right? But if that's the culture that you've cultivated, and you can back it up with something tangible and then put a dollar figure to it, it's like, now you go from the sense of, well, it's really great here, to, let me show you how it's really great here, to, here's the results of being in my office.
hmm
And it drives that home in a unique way. Um, when you ask for the greatest tip I could give you, do you mean you personally?
Yeah, now that we've worked with each other for one session, but you know my personality, and I think you have a really good way to read people. What would you give me?
For you personally, um, I just want to highlight, if people don't know this, you are one of the most organized, systems driven, like goal achieving machines. And that's the right way to put it, that I've encountered in the industry. Like, you're right up there on that get it done, like, high efficiency. And if you say, I'll do this, I'm like, I can take that to the bank. Like, it's,
hmm
and so that, and I think, a weakness is a strength overdone. From what I've started to come to understand, there's a sense there too around that, the moments of connection, and this is something that I kind of shine. This is a little bit more where I think I shine, is that, am I connecting effectively with this person,
Okay.
and am I bringing out everything that needs to be brought out of them for them to garner some understanding about themselves or their business or their life even, right? And it's that moment of pause where there's a those two things, that high, like get it done, goal oriented thing, can steamroll the time or the creation of the moment of
Mm-hmm.
bonding that takes place between people.
Mm-hmm.
So just from what I've seen, understand that that moment of bonding, of being really human, is a part of the process, would be
Right.
the biggest part of the advice I would give you. It's not,
Thank you.
it doesn't interfere with the process. It's a part of it. And you've got to engineer that into the entire process of getting to know somebody. And it's going to be done. You'll do it in a
Yeah.
way that matches you. I can't say that there's a
Yeah.
way to do that for everybody.
Yeah. And I'm glad that's great advice because I, for the longest time, lived like a very private life. And bonding and connecting just means relating to them. Uh, One of the greatest like quotes or phrases is, "My clients are a past version of me." And so if I can connect with them and understand who they are, what they want to be, what they want to do, what do they do outside of the business, that bonding that you talk about is so important for them to know that I see them as more than just an agent at my office. And that I understand, the hurdles and the challenges and the adversity that we face, all very differently, but to have some sort of compassion and empathy of what they're going through wherever they are in their cycle
Yeah.
of this business. Yeah, very good
But
point. And yeah, go ahead.
it's interesting, and I can say this, there's more. I think when you become in that broker owner, the coach mentor role, that that comes to a certain extent with this kind of leadership, there is an element where you become more involved in other people's personal lives. And I don't mean, deeply involved in meddling, but where a part of this, and I think best said by Simon Sinek, he says, work life balance is not about how much time you spend at a certain place.
Hmm.
It's answering the question, do I feel safe at work? Like I would feel safe at home, right? Paraphrasing there, but that's, some of his rhetoric or some of his lecture topics. And you will encounter agents who are having strife at home. And I mean, I have colleagues now that are going through divorces, parents passing away. And when things like that happen, that supersedes business in so many ways.
Yeah.
There are, and those are things that we're all going to face as human beings, right? It's the car accident that takes you out for 6 months.
Hmm.
And does your agent feel safe enough to come in there and open up about what's really holding them back?
Hmm.
And one, I think we got to acknowledge not everybody's going to get to that depth with every person they meet. It's
Yeah.
just an unrealistic expectation. But,
Yeah.
to communicate that this is a place where if that's what you need to have that conversation. We can close the door and have that private conversation, and that solutions can be found,
Mm.
right?
I often find, so I do need another advice from you because I feel like it's not a role. It's my duty to create that safe space of conversation. And it ends up, I find, um, being a therapy session. So, how do I draw this line where I am creating a safe environment, yet I have a job to do because I'm not breaking any rules. It's confidential. I'm not breaking any rules. Um, but I also know that um, I signed up to be a managing broker. And so if there's a lot of self-sabotage, if there's a lot of, things are going like things are holding them back for 6 months, 12 months, at what point can I say to myself, this is not matching? Like, this is not matching. It could be just even they're not, their mindset is not getting into this business.
So now, here's a bit of the callous side of the sort of pure metrics side of it. As a broker owner, every agent is an investment in time and resources. You are investing your time and
Yeah.
resources into that business relationship. They are investing their time and resources into a business relationship with you.
Hmm.
And if an agent is pulling you in a direction that's taking you out of that investment that you're making, and of course there's a human element. Yes, your partner got cancer. You need help.
Yeah.
Good. Let's give you all the help you can. You deserve compassion. The inverse of that is, or the opposite of that is, well, I just haven't done many sales, and I just need a deal. And I don't know. And you go, well, did you remember we talked last time? Yeah. And did you do all the prospecting calls? Did you organize your client list, or, write the names down of everybody and start to get organized? Well, I did, but I only got to 10. Did you look at your Facebook profile? Oh yeah. How many people are on there? Like 500. So did you write their names? Well, I don't know them, and they wouldn't. I didn't ask if they would do business with you. I asked, did you write their names on a list? Right. So sometimes we need to hold people to accountability in the business relationship, and sometimes we need to be good people and do the human thing. And I would treat it like, if I had a friend who is constantly imposing on me with the same problem,
Hmm.
you know, of course when they come to me, I'm going to be caring and compassionate with my friend. You know, that's why they're my friend, right? That's part of
Yeah.
being
There's a
friends.
role as a friend. Yeah.
Yeah. Then there's another part of that where, if they're heading into a territory in a place the same time over and over again, they're looking for help, maybe by repeating that conversation, but there's a breakdown somewhere in there. So either as part of the business relationship, I'm going to identify their breakdown, or what I think is the breakdown, move on. But as part of the friend relationship, I also need to know when this is getting me out of my depth. I mean, I'm happy to listen to people and give them compassion and empathy and care when that's called for, but I'm not a counselor.
Mm.
Right? I'm
Mhm.
I'm not the greatest person. I'm not a marriage therapist. Please don't
Mhm.
bring your spouse in and have me tell them that you're right. Like, that's not a way where I can go. So
Mhm.
you've got to know when you're getting out of your depth, and just be clear. Like, hey, I think I'm just a little out of my depth with this, because I hear this
Mhm.
problem again and again and again. And we've provided a couple of solutions. Those don't seem to be a match. So is there some additional resource either inside or outside of the brokerage that you think you need? Or are you just looking for, you're just looking for more compassion?
For right.
And there's, at a certain limit, like, yeah, I have lots of that for people, but for the same thing for 6 months, now that's being a little unfair to me, how you're treating me. And part of being
Right.
compassionate is also setting our own boundaries, right?
Right. I was going to say that. Yeah, learning to set boundaries. And I've learned to say this, are you looking to just vent? You want me to just listen, or are you actually looking for a solution or some advice? And so the power of the pause, let them vent and let them have it because they're emotionally invested in the situation. And then I sit back and I like reassess, is this really my role, first and foremost, and then letting them know, um, I'm just here to listen. Where do you need me to help? So yeah, I find that I'm preparing my agendas with the coaching sessions that I schedule with the agents, and it ends up kind of veering off to mindset and personal situations that they're in versus the productivity and production discussions. And we can't get to that until things are resolved here, I find. And whether that's in our office or whether in one discussion or whether it's, seeking help outside, that's great advice from you to me to set that boundary. And
I'm just curious. In your coaching sessions,
mhm,
do you give that agent or that person space to also set the agenda?
good question. It depends on who they are as the agent. If they're brand new, then there's a typical process, setting them the foundations, like the roadmap that you were mentioning.
Hmm.
So, in terms of the roadmap, the onboarding, it's very clear what we want to accomplish on the first 1 to 2 meetings. Once they're past the 6 months, after they finish the applied practice course, or they're a few years in, typically they want, yeah, they want to know, they actually have an agenda or certain questions that they want to ask me. So yeah, it
Okay,
depends on who the agent is.
interesting. Because that's one thing that I don't want to say I'm excellent at yet. Something I certainly worked on is as I'm sitting down with people, I go, I have some things that I've thought to talk about. Is there anything that you really need to discuss in our time together today? And
Mhm.
I find that even with brand new agents, that is, they still have a question that can be a really reasonable question, and they just didn't get the chance. And
Right.
oftentimes, it doesn't necessarily need to dominate the meeting. It can just be 2 minutes.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
And
I think I've learned from my coaches who've coached me. They have a very general. How are you feeling before we go in? How are you feeling? And is there anything you need to clear up before we dive into what the session looks like? So I'm learning that as well, not to be so agenda focus centric, So it's really just how are they feeling? Where are they at in their business? And getting that out of the way. And then because obviously I'm there to service them. So it's what they need, not what I want to get out of it.
hmm hmm
So yeah. How do you or me, how do I stay on top of trends and changes in the real estate market to ensure that my recruits are well informed?
prayer. Um, you stand in front of the
If
fire
it was
hose.
that easy, oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
you stand in front of the fire hose. You put it on full tilt, and you try to drink as much as you can. Um,
That sounds like a brokerage that's not going to survive very long.
I think part of it is selection. I short of being a journalist, where your entire job is to stay on top of trends, you need to be selective about the things that matter, that you're going to really dive into. Um, Interest rates, for example, being a really, really, really hot topic for the last almost year now.
Since last year. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it has been driving people mad.
Mm.
And when the interest rates thing happened, I started in and I decided myself to do a little piece of research. And I've got most of the data in now, and I'm getting ready to actually write a white paper on it, which is the relationship between the Bank of Canada rate and property pricing in Metro Vancouver. So, the board stats track benchmark median average prices for detached homes, townhouses, condos. So we went all the way back to 2006, which is where I could find the oldest mortgage rate data. Not from the Bank of Canada, but for also the 5-year fixed and the 5-year fixed discounted rate. So posted and
Mhm.
discounted. And then we did the analysis to track Bank of Canada rate, 5-year fixed posted, 5-year fixed discounted at a 3-month delay, a 4-month delay, and a 5-month delay against every price point. And the common wisdom is if interest rates go up, prices should come down. And if
Mhm.
interest rates go down, prices should go up. And
Mhm.
everybody looks at the Bank of Canada rate like it's this huge indicator. And what we found tracking the month over month from May 2006 all the way to current, so about 200 data points on the Bank of Canada rate at a 3-month delay, 4-month delay, and 5-month delay each, that common wisdom fails 180 sometimes on average. So there isn't a really clear correlation.
Mhm.
I don't want to say there's absolutely none because it's, there's obviously 20 times when it did happen, but when you have 180 against the, betting against it, it's a breakdown in correlation. And
Mhm.
so when I look at that, I go, all the obsession over interest rates feels like a flash in the pan. And it's something to be newsworthy. Now,
Yeah.
I think when you're trying to stay on top of trends and things like that, there is a sense of equipping people with uh, newsworthy stuff to stay to look uh, on top of things. But I think we also need part of our job is to curate the things that really matter. So are interest
Right.
rates the thing that really matter to your realtor's business, or is, you know, maintaining their current level of business the real underlying question? Because we can talk about things that are timeless around
Mhm.
maintaining and growing your business
Mhm.
in spite of whatever the interest rates are doing. And it's your agent, again, we're B2B, we're broker to agent. So that's a business to business service. The agents are business to consumer. Let the agents be on top of the things that they should be on top of with their clients, and keep a common core, right?
Mhm.
I recently saw an ad on this, and this is, I just about laughed. And it was a guy online who's talking about circle prospecting. And I was like, what the heck is circle prospecting? And what he's talking about is when you have a sale, when you get a listing, when you do something, knock the doors of the neighbors around you, because you now have a reason to go and meet 20 to 50 people in a neighborhood.
Mhm.
And this has been taught in sales training since, I don't know, the 40s, the 20s. When you sell an encyclopedia to one household, tell all the neighbors that the new smartest neighbor is living 2 doors down from them. And if they
Mhm.
want to keep pace, they need an encyclopedia too. And he's like, it's an old sales thing,
Right.
repackaged, rebranded, and modernized for today. And
Mhm.
but it's the same fundamental thing. That's a timeless approach. Something happened. Let me talk to people, right? That's growing your business. That's engaging meaningfully, no matter what the interest rates are doing, no matter what prices are doing, no matter what's triggering things in the real estate market.
Mhm. And this information, it's so, you can talk hours and hours about this stuff, but I know that a lot of the agents are just doing cookie cutter information, vlogging it, and still yet there's not enough understanding because they don't understand it. So I'm going to get you back at our office one day to do a presentation on this, and how to deliver information that will resonate with their audience and their clients. It's almost at the hour. I want to wrap up. You and I can talk forever about this. We're gonna meet up on Friday anyways, but I always round out with 5 rapid fire questions. So these are just quick answers you're gonna give me before we let you go to getting your busy day on there. So, if you were not a recruiting consultant, what job would you be doing?
Probably some kind of training or teaching role.
What 3 words would best describe you?
Uh, I'm a real estate nerd. Well, I'm a nerd in general, I guess. Foodie
Hmm.
and martial artist. Pick it my
Ah,
life,
okay.
my whole life.
talk about that later. If you're to open your own real estate brokerage, what city or country would it be in and why?
Oh, I wouldn't open a brokerage. I would try to open a brand. If I was going to go
Okay.
big, I might as well go all the way.
So it'll be like a real estate brand, but it wouldn't,
Yeah.
would it be a real estate brand? Okay. Share a memorable recruiting or hiring failure you've encountered in your career. And what lesson did you take away from that experience?
Oh,
Quickly.
I I got my ego involved with a new agent. And not in the sense that, I tried to dominate the conversation or, sort of be the I'm in charge kind of role, but I just got my ego involved in the whole process. And I was like, I did everything right. And they're like, I'm going to this company. And I was like, what? And it just was that like, it was one of those ones. And I don't want to name names or say companies, but it just hit me hard. And I was like, oh, I see what happened there. That was me. And I let that, like, I got this. I'm on a high end. And so never let yourself get too caught up in your own legend was
Mm,
was a big one. And then also never let yourself get too low at the low points.
ah, good, good tip for me. And finally, Cameron, how can our listeners find you?
Simple CameronT.ca. So CAMERONT, just the letter .ca.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me about recruiting. Have so much to learn, and this was a fantastic way to get to know behind the scenes of what happens in the not. I don't want to again not recruiting. It's about finding out more about your career
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah, career
So
conversations.
awesome. Well, thanks for your time, and we will chat later.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jenny. Appreciate it.
Thank you.